Would you like to get better and faster at playing your chords and your inversions? I'm going to show you the 3 things that might be holding you back and how to improve all of them. But first, since this video is for beginners and as well as those who are intermediate and want to become more advanced, we should answer the question, just in case you don't know, what is an inversion? So typically a chord starts in what we call root position. It is spread out in thirds, such as this C, E, G. Again, that's called root position. You can then take the C that's on the bottom and move it to the top. So now the third is on the bottom, the fifth is in the middle, and the root is on top. We call that first inversion. Then you can take that E that's on the bottom, move it to the top, and now you have the fifth on the bottom, the G, the C, the root is in the middle, and the E, the third, is on top. That is second inversion. And if you do that one more time, move the G to the top, you'll be back in root position an octave higher. So one of the exercises we like to practice as a pianist is moving through all of the inversions, typically starting on a root position, moving up to first, second inversion, and then root position, and then coming back down. But as I said before, there are 3 problems that tend to get in the way of doing this well. And the first one is that you have the wrong fingering. Since that root position chord starts with fingers 1, 3, and 5, it's easy to just keep that fingering throughout the inversions, and that actually works on one of the inversions, but it doesn't work on the other. So let's talk about the rule of thumb. You've probably heard that expression in other walks of life, the rule of thumb is. Well, guess what? There really is a rule of thumb when it comes to piano, and that is when you have to spread out your hands, most likely you're going to move the thumbs away from the other fingers or move the other fingers away from the thumbs. We're not going to choose when we have a choice of, say, 6 keys to cover with 5 fingers. We're not going to spread the pinkies out. There are some exceptions, of course, but when it comes to your chords, when you get into the inversion, you are covering the distance of a sixth. In first inversion and second inversion, you're going the distance of a sixth. That means your 5 fingers are covering 6 keys. So 1 key is not going to be covered, and that key that you leave out is between the 1 and the 2. So let's look at the actual hand shape that you need for both first and second inversion. You want the gap of a key between your 1 and your 2, and this does not change when you go from first inversion to second inversion. All that changes is which finger you're using. So if your right hand is in this shape, and you just use 1, 2, and 5 right where it is in this position, you're going to be in a first inversion shape. If you switch to your third finger, you're going to be in a second inversion shape. On the left hand, it's the other way around. Your thumb is on the top end of your hand, so you are going to use 5, 3, 1 for your first inversion shape, and you're going to switch to 2 for your second inversion shape. So that's step number 1. You want to get the fingering correct. The second common problem is not moving the whole hand at once. I see this very often in my students. They know that they need to move from root position to first inversion, and they need to get their 1, 2, 5 down, and very often they find those keys one at a time, placing down the thumb, then the 2, then the 5, then they go to second inversion, they place down the 1, then the 3, and the 5. You have no chance of building any real speed with this method. You need to move the entire hand at once. So this is where I want to remind you of a very important concept that I teach in all my lessons, and that is that you need to visualize. So while you're playing that root position chord, you need to see with your eyes where you are heading, the E, G, C. And you need to move the whole hand at once. And if you miss it, try again. Same thing, when you want to move from first inversion to second inversion, you want to visualize that. And not just with your eyes, but the sensation in your hand. What does it feel like when you switch from first inversion to second inversion? You want to make that switch as quick as you can as you're moving your entire hand all at once. All 3 fingers that you're going to use should come down at one time. And the third thing that holds people back is if you get the fingerings right, you start moving all at once. It's just the inability to move quickly enough. There's that hesitation that plagues so many of us when we're trying to learn something new or more advanced on the piano. So before I show you some things that you can practice to get better at all of these steps, let me remind you my name is David Lane. I teach piano, I teach music theory and composition online as well as in person, and will regularly be sharing some videos like this here on YouTube. And if you're getting any value out of this, if you would please hit the thumbs up on this video and leave me a comment if any questions come to mind during the video. Okay, we've talked about the fingering and the shape that you need for each inversion. We want to go over that one more time. So root position is easy. Your hand is the distance of a fifth. There's one finger on every key. You use 1, 3, and 5. When you go to first inversion or second inversion, your thumb to pinky is covering a sixth. You want to move 2, 3, and 4 closer to the pinky than you are the thumb. Now, before you start plowing through your inversions, like for example, taking the C major chord and going through all of the inversions related to C major, I find that it's helpful to separate getting the shape of the inversion, the shape of each chord, separate from moving to the correct notes. So let me demonstrate. Let's say that you have C, E, G root position. What is the quickest way for your right hand to get into the first inversion shape? You simply need to drop the thumb to separate it from 2, 3, 4, 5, and then use 1, 2, and 5. Just like this. Now to go from first inversion to second inversion, it's really easy. You're already in the hand position you need. You just simply need to switch that middle note from the 2 to the 3, right where it is. You don't move anything at all. Just switch to the 2 to the 3. So you see what I've done so far is I've gone from a root position C chord to a first inversion G chord to a second inversion E minor. But that's all really irrelevant. We're just practicing the technique in the fastest way we can. And then to get back to root position, your 3 and 5 is already fine where it is. Bring the thumb back in by 1 key, so you're right back to where you started. So this is the smooth way to go through. Now if you go back, you can also take that backwards. Let's go through the left hand. Same thing. For it to get to first inversion, you need to let the other 4 fingers move away from the thumb to create some separation. But you keep the 5, 3, 1 shape. But what this does is it moves your 5, 3 down a step. So now you're in first inversion. To go to second inversion, same easy switch. You switch from the 3rd finger to the 2nd finger. Remember, this is backwards from the right hand because of the shape of the hand. Then to get back to root position, this is maybe the trickiest one. You need to draw your hand back in as you switch back to your 3, 5, 3, 1. You draw 5, 4, 3, 2 back towards your thumb. And then practice what that would be like going back down through the inversions, but again, just staying in one position. You need to practice this and feel like you are close to mastery with it before you really start moving through the inversions proper within a chord. Because the secret to doing those fast is that you have to quickly change hand shapes. So let's now put these chords in motion. We're going to keep in the key of C. We're going to move from root position to first inversion, and then up to second inversion, and up to root position and back down. But let's show how you can now build speed. So step 1, you're playing a root position chord. You change to your first inversion shape, and then you move to the right spot without moving any part of your hand, just keeping your hand in the correct position. Then you shift the weight to your 3rd finger to make the second inversion shape and move to the next chord. Let's hold that just for a moment. You want to go, then bring it back. Bring your thumb back towards your hand, switch to 1, 3, 5, and move back to C. You should practice only one move at a time, both directions. This is going to add up as you start trying to do the up and the down. You're getting both directions, but with 2 chords at a time. And you do this with both hands. But for the sake of time, I'll show the left hand with the next step that I'm going to show you. And this is what I call for now, until I come up with a better term, a ricochet approach. And what you're going to do, let's assume that we've already worked out the inversion shape, we've practiced this. You're holding root position. You want to imagine going on to the next inversion. You know what that's like. You're going to move your thumb. You see the keys you're going to go to. And then, just before you go there, you repeat the chords you're playing really quick to bounce off of it, and then play the next inversion. And then repeat your first inversion, just before you come back down to the root. So what's happening is that you are simulating a full speed movement, but you're giving yourself time to think about it, and then you're getting the 2 chords quickly by just repeating what you're playing before you move to the next chord. Do the same thing with first inversion to second inversion, and back. Do the same thing with second inversion, up to root position, and back. Okay, you can now do this approach with 3 chords at a time. So starting at the bottom, root position to first inversion to second inversion, and then go back down. And then maybe start at the top. Go down to second inversion, down to first inversion, and back up. And now you are ready to go through the whole cycle. Try the ricochet approach at first, and then leave out that ricochet and go cleanly. The important thing early on is that how long you hold each chord doesn't matter. It's all about how quickly do you move from one chord to the next. You can then use a metronome to increase the tempo so that you don't hold each chord any longer than you have to, and you get to where you can just bounce from one chord to another. As with all things technique, transpose this to other keys. Start with your majors, all 12 majors, go to all 12 minors, then try this with augmented chords and diminished, and then you'll be able to try it with more advanced chords. My name is David Lane. I hope that this helps you with your practice and learning to play through your chords and inversions better. If you have any questions, anything that wasn't clear, feel free to ask me in the comments. Also, please subscribe and click the bell for notifications. And if you would give this video a thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching.